Denzel Curry, King of the Mischievous South Volume 2 album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about this latest album from Mr. Denzel Curry, a Miami-based MC, and over the last decade has very quickly become one of the most prominent figures in modern hip-hop and an absolute favorite of mine. If you didn't, go check out my ranking of his discography up into this album. I dropped it only yesterday. But for right now, we're here to chat about his new album. Now, I've been a fan of Denzel's for quite some time. He started turning some heads in the early days with some very solid mixtapes before dropping his debut album, his technical debut album, Nostalgic 64, and I liked it. I liked the very cloudy beats that reminded me something out of the book of Clam's Casino, as well as Denzel's energy. I just kind of felt like he was still trying to figure out his sound on this project, which he did only a few short years later with the Imperial record. It's still one of my favorite rap albums of the last decade or so. It's just such a gritty, such a raw and in-your-face record. I mean, Denzel's energy is one thing, but his storytelling here is on another level. Not only do you get these very intense, very monochromatic, very boom-bappy bangers, but we also get a lot of very raw and personal stories as well. And ever since, Denzel has not sat down and just kind of called that his sound. With his next album, Taboo, he started spreading his wings a little bit, going for a much more artsy, psychedelic, and genuinely experimental sound. And I thought it was awesome. I thought that his ideas in the much bigger scheme of things were actually coming together really nicely. Now, I'm sorry, I have to be that guy, but I've never been that big of a Zoo fan. 2019 Zoo saw him take on that Miami sound, and I do really appreciate that. You know, from a distance, I salute that. I respect the album a lot, but production-wise, it's not my favorite. Consistency-wise, it's not either. I started to worry a little bit about Denzel around that time, but only a few short months later, he released Unlocked with Kenny Beats. 17 minutes of fantastic chemistry between rapper and producer. It is raw. It is Denzel on another level. But speaking of that, Denzel being on another level, he crossed the plane entirely with his last record, Melt My Eyes, See Your Future, my runner-up album of the year in 2022. This was a jazzy, ambitious, and incredibly creative conscious hip-hop album. One that Denzel, only a few short months later, decided to re-record via jazz rap, and it was also pretty awesome in its own right. So Denzel has been really busy over the last couple of years, and whenever he's dropping an album, I'm curious to see the sound that he's going with. He is pretty ambitious, and this time around, he has taken down... And this time around, Denzel is treating us to a very short and sweet collection of tracks that just very much salute the old sound of Southern hip-hop, that haunted sound specifically. And a lot of this record, it's exactly what you think it is. It is Denzel making the best out of this sound, and not only that, but bringing out the best in his guests. Take, for example, Ultra Shit featuring Kenyatta early on in this album. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. Denzel has this way of, when he arrives, he just kind of leaves an instant impression. That's what this is. I love the gritty beat and the haunted soul sample. It's got that old school, southern, almost gothic hip-hop style. Like fans of very, very old 3-6 Mafia, you're gonna want to check this out. And Denzel sounds really great. He sounds focused. He sounds refreshed, even if this isn't his most animated performance. It's still a pretty damn mesmerizing performance. It's a great track, and Kenyatta's feature is awesome. Then we get Set It featuring Maxo Cream, and let me tell you, Denzel really is not wasting any time. I love the beats. I love the production. They are far more warped and weird than anything on Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. No, this is a lot more in your face, and that's just fine by me. His verse here, it is nasty. I love the beat and the production. It's just so raw and tortured and dark. Not only that, Denzel definitely brought the charisma to this track. And Maxo Cream, who I've never really hated, but I've always just kind of never been blown away by either, actually sounds really, really right at home on this beat. One of the better features on this record. Black Flag Freestyle featuring that Mexican OT. I have loved this track since it dropped. This is off the walls. From start to finish, this track is just a flex. I love the very moody, very nocturnal beat that we get here. And Denzel's delivery, once again, it's a little bit more subdued this time around, but he makes up for that with a very focused, nasty verse. It makes him sound like a damn killer, and truthfully, honestly, that Mexican OT's verse here, it's my favorite feature on this entire record. I've never really dove into his stuff before, but now I really want to. Yeah, it's absolutely ruthless. G's Up featuring 2 Chainz and Mike Dimes, this is a major deep cut for me. The beat here, that alone, wow, it almost sounds like a post-rock sample, like something out of the book of Godspeed You Black Emperor. It's one of the most hyped tunes here. This is very classic Dirty South. And I've always thought that 2 Chainz in moderation can be unbelievably entertaining, and that's exactly what he is here. And Mike Dimes definitely matches Denzel's energy. We also get SKED featuring Project Pat and Kenny Mason. It's one of the more straightforward tracks here, but that's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it's always just great to hear Denzel do nothing fancy and lay out some bars. It's when he puts out his best stuff sometimes. This beat is just so cold, and Denzel sounds like a goddamn killer. Kenny Mason's energetic verse makes this track pop a little, and Project Pat sounds right at home here. Great to hear him. Now, let me tell you, most of this album I really do like. As a matter of fact, the bulk of the material here is really good, but there are some just small issues with this record. Just some things that I just can't oversee about this thing. For one, who the hell ordered all these skits? All of them featuring Kingpin Skinny Pimp as well. And to an extent, they do fit the vibe of the album, but I'm just not that excited by it. And throughout the record, they don't really add anything to this. Denzel's always been a very no bullshit kind of guy, but here, this is just, what is this? And I can hear y'all in the comments. Yes, these skits barely take up 2 to 3 minutes of the album, but we're talking about a 30-minute record, and we're talking about multiple annoying interludes that just kind of break up the string of very decent tracks here. So yeah, it's annoying. Not only that, but they don't really add anything. I mean, the Choose Wisely one at least has a little bit of an atmosphere, but it's like, I feel like this track could have easily just been tailed on to another tune here. It's a solid idea, but it's not capitalized on. I mean, it's a very good album overall. It's a Denzel project. You know what you're getting, but I feel like this time around, it's this much less consistent. Like Hot One, for example, featuring Tia Corinne and A$AP Ferg. When this track dropped, I was so excited, and it has grown on me a bit. Initially, I was very underwhelmed with it. But pound for pound, the beat is one of the best tracks here. Denzel's verse is explosive and raw, and I will eat any track featuring A$AP Ferg for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm a big Trap Lord guy. But once again, Tia Corinne's vocals on this track, her performance is by far the most obnoxious one on this entire record. I mean, this track's far from bad, but it's very middle of the road. And Cole Pimp, wow, this is a real misfire here. I mean, this one features genuine legend Juicy J, and good God, who let Ty Dolla $ign in here. Not only is this the worst track of the record, this is one of the worst Denzel tracks I've heard in ages. This beat, I feel like Denzel was out to lunch when this thing got okayed. Juicy J, I mean, like, he sounds fine, but he just deserves so much better. And I mean, Ty Dolla $ign, it is what it is. I've never been a fan of his, and in 2024, I'm a fan of his even less. Oh, and by the way, Denzel is barely here. We gotta point this stuff out, folks. However, he does save some of the best tracks for last, like Wishlist featuring Armani White. This beat here is one of the freakiest and weirdest of the record. And when this track takes off, look out, Denzel here is at his most explosive and urgent and in your face, and he sounds great. It's upbeat, it's urgent, it's exciting, it's everything that I wanted to hear, and Armani White matches that. Hit the Floor featuring Ski Mask the Slump God. This was one of the last singles dropped from this record, and it might be my favorite. This beat is one of the bulkiest and most booming here. And let me tell you, it is amped up to 11. Denzel's energy on this track is wild. This track sounds like a modern southern banger, but completely warped and monochrome. Oh, and Ski Mask's verse is absolutely fantastic. And Hoodlums featuring Play That Boy Zay and A$AP Rocky is an absolute trunk banger. This beat is very mid-2010s, and I mean that in the best way. It reminds me of early Denzel. A$AP Rocky and Play That Boy Zay actually put up two of the best features on this entire project. It's a hard-hitting posse cut with Denzel sounding at his most dangerous, and yeah, it ends off this album on a very solid note. Don't get it twisted, most of this record is up to snuff and some of the best hip-hop you're gonna hear all year, but it can't just be me thinking that this is just a little less consistent this time around from Denzel. I mean, the skits that just get worse and more annoying as this album goes on. And the Cole Pimp track, which is one of the biggest missteps that Denzel's had in a while. Like, we can't just look past that. But the reality is most of this record is really hyped, really urgent, really in your face, and just some fantastic rap from Denzel. And he gets the best out of his features, and the beats are great. It's a solid sound. I just wish it was a little bit more consistent. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.